Hello, welcome to the Displacer Geeks. Hudson, I think, was just picking his nose. My name is Brian.
No, I wasn't
Ew.
picking my nose. It was just my glasses.
Oh,
Hey, my
sure,
name's Hudson,
sure.
and we're two geeks talking about the geeks. And
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
we're going to talk about Brian. Are we going to talk about battles?
We're gonna talk about D&D combat.
Nice.
It is something that we are both very passionate about, and we both kind of are on slightly different viewpoints on it in a way, I feel like. Even though we're also very similar in what we agree with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know.
Now this is gonna be D&D combat that we're gonna talk about. However, it I mean, game systems are wildly different for combat, but a lot of things we talk about today would work for really any tabletop system. I feel like it's just some systems that lean more towards X, Y, or Z. So one of the things about D&D combat to me, Hudson, and you hear me all the time say it, it can just be too darn long and boring. So why don't we talk about that first? What do you think about that when someone says D&D combat's too long and too boring?
I have had combat go entire sessions,
Oh,
plural.
oh, kill me
Uh,
now. Yep.
yeah, it was a long, complicated combat, and there was a lot of moving pieces, some weird choke points and some hangups on the cut for the thing. And it was fine, I
Yeah.
guess.
Okay. Okay. So it wasn't the most fun in the world. Okay. Now was that particular combat like the end of the campaign? Was it something like super epic? Just random long combat for 2 sessions?
I wouldn't say that it was random. It was a very intentional combat. So what we were
Okay.
doing in the story, where we were going trying to find these pieces of like a key to get someplace else. And so we got to the guy that was guarding the third piece, and he bottlenecked us pretty good, and it just
Yeah.
drug the combat out.
So it was like a giant boss fight.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
it was, and the DM did some very smart things with the terrain, and then the way that the creatures were fighting, we were kind of bottlenecked, which
Yeah.
really led to a lot of our problems.
Gotcha. Okay. So, to me, D&D can be very long because it's like a math thing. Like if everybody has 50 points and the bad guys all do 10 points apiece and you guys do 12 points apiece, you can kind of figure out how many rounds potentially it could go without dice exploding or spells and stuff like that. But, but yeah, sometimes it just goes a long time. And, yeah, I love role playing so much. And I know not everybody's like that, right? So some people do love the combat, combat, combat. I feel like when players are new to role playing games, like the first thing they do is like, we want to combat, 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 which that makes a lot of sense too. But just the older I've got, and I just enjoy the role playing a lot more. However, I don't not like combat. So to me, I feel like if you find yourself in running a game and you feel like players maybe are bored or something of your combat, just look, if they're looking at their phone or they're like spacing off, there's a good chance they're maybe a little bored. Make sure the combat's meaningful and make sure the combat's just got a little bit of a scare to it. I think
Mhm.
giving the players like the uh-oh moment, like, are we going to survive this? Not everybody's the same for sure, but I do feel like that helps them stay engaged and I think it adds excitement to it, really. You're just like, oh man, is this gonna happen? Are we gonna defeat this thing? Oh my gosh, this is crazy. So I think that's a way to at least get combat to be a little more exciting. What do you think on that statement?
Yeah, that's true. And in that example that I presented to you, we did have one character like flat out die.
Ooh, that's interesting.
And then there was kind of like touch and go for a while. Also, there was a couple times we couldn't really do a lot in combat.
Mm-hmm.
So we were just doing like weird things, and
Hmm.
we were fighting a vampire, and we were like his coffin was like right there. We're like, we set it on fire. We didn't have anything else to do that turn, right? Like we couldn't get
Gotcha.
to him. We're
Yeah.
just like, set it on fire.
Yeah.
And then like it got to the point where like he was actually in danger of dying because the paladin finally got to him. He was in
Sure.
danger of dying, but like they just turn into mist and then they go to their grave, like their coffin and rest up. But we had to destroy it because we were bored.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
He's like, I'm leaving.
that's
Goodbye.
funny. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes D&D combat can be a little tricky to figure out because you can try to follow the rules and be like, okay, well, there's four heroes and I'm gonna have they're level 3, so I gotta throw a CR3 creature at them, but sometimes the hit points are just too low. Sometimes those things hit way harder than you think. Depends on the group build. But, mixing things up, trying things out, and being prepared to quick in combat
Mhm.
definitely can help, I feel like. Those are some different ways I think that can help combat out.
I fudged one combat ever.
One combat ever? Yeah.
Yep. Well, it was by one. It was like one or two hit points, so it was all as I fudged it by.
Yeah, you just have to forget it, it's done. Is the combat going on too long?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Also, two of the players were quasi dead,
Yeah.
and there was only one player left. And I'm like,
He's gonna get
I don't really want to TPK them.
yeah.
Like, and they
Yeah.
hit, but they just like they missed it by like one or two hit points. I'm like, they're dead. Like,
Yeah. Well, you know.
got it. I think I did it a good way though. Like when I fudged it though, because I was just like, and they drop. Because I thought like that was me thinking about like whether or not to like drag it out for another 2 rounds.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotcha. What about this? So I would say this too. The energy level of the DM definitely plays a part, I feel like. So if you love combat and you're super energetic, even if it goes long, I think the players a lot of the times will enjoy that. But if
Yeah.
you're just and lots of description, actually add way more description in your attacks, and that helps out combat tremendously. In
Hmm.
fact, our friend Lance, holy cow, was he amazing at describing combat. And I had never really thought about it to that level back when we were playing with them. And I was like, well, this guy goes all out with his actions. He's like, I swing around and I slice up. And, he even described some of the combat, like the blood splatters. I'm like, holy cow, he's always on. That's cool. And just the more I played over the years, the more we do that. It's fun. That is really fun.
It is. Like I've tried to like describe instead of just saying action surge, like I dig deep and find some more strength, take a second
Yeah.
attack, and
Yeah, it adds to it. It adds to it. If you do voices, that can be fun too. Again, a lot of people don't like to do voices, but there's a lot of people that do. But getting immersed into it can be super, super entertaining. But I do like that a lot. I do like that a lot. One thing that I think is kind of fun for combat as well, not that you have to have it every time, but I do like it when the players have a chance to potentially like talk to the enemies first, and then you can kind of gauge, ooh, can I talk my way out of this? Or can I, trick them into something and get out of combat? Or can I avoid it altogether? Or can I trick them and surprise them?
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people probably don't think about that a lot, but why not? If you come up across a band of crazy goblins or crazy kobolds or something, why not give the players the opportunity to interact with them first? And I think that can be kind of a fun little way to go about combat.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
One,
Sometimes people do try to like talk their way out of combat.
yeah,
There was an example recently where the group of us got surrounded by this barbarian tribe that was known to be very aggressive, and we're like, yo, we don't really want to fight, and we got you outnumbered. Can we not?
yeah.
And like, but we were able to like talk our way out of it. They're like, "What are you doing here?" We're like, "Came here to ring the bell because the whale can take us to this other place we want to go." They're like, "You don't want to fight the whale? No, want to ride? Want to want to
Ride the whale.
ride?
Isn't it
Yeah.
ride?
Well, the
It's ride the walrus, not the whale. Jeez.
no, it was a whale, and he had a
Oh,
ship on him.
fine. Oh, nice. That's fun.
And then like he got on the ship, and then he like went underwater, and he gave us like a tour underneath the sea.
Was there a little crab named Sebastian singing?
No, no,
Oh, oh, okay.
no.
All right.
But in an otherwise like complete campaign setting, it was kind of this little fun little like fluff piece.
Awesome. Nice.
Because it's the campaign is the Wrath of the Frostmaiden is the name of it, and we ran
Um,
into an ancient white dragon.
okay.
That was a combat where you were talking about like maybe giving the players an option to
Uh,
not engage.
oh, well, that's good. What level were you?
Here we go. Do they see us? Yeah. Can we go around?
Yeah, go around. I think it's fun. I think it's fun to give people options to, because again, I love role playing too, so it's kind of fun. But even when you try to role play your way out of the combat and the enemy's like, nope, we're going after you, like it's a cool moment. So the build up, there's tension and you try to figure things out. You know what I've been doing, I feel like lately, it's probably because I've been the DM on the podcast for our recent campaign. And when you're DMing on the podcast, I feel like you have to like think differently and got to make sure you're always like trying to be descriptive and stuff. So I feel like we're being extra descriptive, which is where all this combat description has come about. And I'm like, oh, well, geez, that's just way fun to do that anyways. But I have really enjoyed during combat. Let's say you go as your character. I'm running the game, you go, and then you hit the enemy. And then I like to say things like you smash the enemy in the chest and it holds strong and it snarls at you and it starts to raise its blade, even though that thing's not going anytime soon. I like to give little clues out of like what it's going to do because I think that's really fun. And then everybody else can like visualize like, oh, he's going after Hudson's guy. But then when it comes to the next player and then they go, and if that player nails them with a spell, maybe that creature afterwards quickly looks over at that player. And
Mhm.
I like that. Or like snarls or says something, even though by the rules they wouldn't be able to say something out of their turn. But actually doing that through turns is really fun.
Mhm.
And I mean, I'm not even super against players doing that or saying things like that either, because just figure it's this big, massive combat going on, and everything happens almost simultaneously in a way that's been pretty fun. That's been pretty fun.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things you did on the last combat that I really enjoyed was like you put out a bunch of terrain, and then it mattered. Like that, some of that terrain really mattered.
Yeah.
Uh, like as far as like trying to get away from things and hide from things.
Oh yeah, like my brother Mark did a awesome job. There was something that was 100% gonna harass the heck out of him from afar, and he quickly used that terrain and was like, I'm gonna move over here, fight this thing, and then I'm gonna crouch down. And when he said that, I was like, yep, that thing can't see him now. And then it actually forced him this thing to, it was up in a tree pretty much shooting at him. So it got down and it took a turn to get over. And it was neat. It was neat. And yeah, making terrain matter is a thing. And I think we talked about it before, theater of the mind. Sometimes we forget about that. This time around, we used the mat. And I have all these like paper or really thick cardboard terrain things that are really nice. They're fun, but it just takes a while to set up, to be honest. And honestly, doing little squares or several squares, I'll make some terrain like this big. So always make it in squares. So there's no like, am I in it or am I not in it? And then in the middle of it, I wrote half. So if you go in there, it's half your movement. The cover that I did the other day is I'm doing all these squares or double squares or rectangles, and then I just put CV, and it's just nice because I just told you guys, hey, you guys are in a forest, so these are things you can get cover behind. And when it's your turn, you just describe what you got behind. If it's a rock, broken piece of statue, a tree, whatever. And it worked out well. Worked out well.
Yeah. And then one of the other things you did pretty well was like we thought we were going to be able to like kind of like cut a path open and like run,
Mm-hmm.
and then something else came in and kind of like closed that gap that we were like had almost cut open.
Yeah, and you're the one who actually like really talked about this a lot over the years, and it does make sense. But you're the one who's saying do little waves and stuff. And yeah, so the other night we did this wave, but it didn't seem like a wave. It seemed like, okay, here is everything because it was a lot. But soon after that, like I think I did second or third round, really.
It's like third
But
round, I think.
I think
Yeah.
it was third. I didn't want to do second. That seemed too early. But yeah, then a little another grouping comes in. And I mean, it was like a uh-oh moment. And it was kind of a horde army that surrounded you guys. And holy cow, was it interesting watching movement mattered like a son of a gun because one person was separated, and before you knew it, that person, probably with not the most hit points, is just getting surrounded. And then you guys were fighting off stuff to get to him, and it ended up being really neat. And what I learned from the other day, and I know I already talked to you about this personally, but I don't love it when combat goes forever. Like to me, an hour long combat, maybe I'm just too fidgety, but gosh, that is so long in my brain. However, two things actually. One from something you told me years back. We were playing in a session, and I'd kind of turned to you. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm losing it," because I just was like bored out of my mind, kind of, sort of, kind of hinted, probably complaining a little bit, like, "Oh, here we go." We like half an hour into this combat, or maybe we're starting another combat. I don't know. But you had said, "Well, your job's to make it entertaining, so don't sit and complain, just have fun." And we started to, and I was like, "Oh, well, okay, you're right. I'm being kind of a sourpuss." And I just started describing things, and you were just describing things, and it was like, geez, God, I gotta quit being a jerk, Like, yeah,
Mm.
that was pretty fun, mindset, right? And then the other night, as a DM, I don't plan hour-long combats or try not to. If it happens, it happens. But I did decide I want the players to have to deal with a swarming army. And there, a lot of them are you hit it once and it's dead, but some of them have little stronger creatures with them. So it's like, okay, got a bunch of all the stuff that's going to get right around you. Can sit there and one shot a bunch of them, but then you got the other things to deal with. And I had that in my mind going into that night. You know what? This is going to take forever, but I'm going to just say, whatever, I don't care. We'll see how long it goes. And if it goes forever, I'm still going to go through it. I actually, all these little grouping of creatures coming at you, I did different initiatives for the groupings, which was pretty hard to keep track of. I made a couple goofs, I know, but for the most part, I think I did pretty good at keeping them all accurate, which I feel like actually made a huge difference. But got done with it. I swear it was a 2.5 hour battle. And part of
That
that,
was long,
yeah, and part of
especially
it,
for you.
yeah, yeah. And part of it's we're on a podcast. We're like pausing the podcast and like moving stuff, then unpausing, and then So we are taking longer because of the podcast. But got over with. It was very tight. It got really dicey. And overall, we got done. Yes, it was really, really long, but I was like, wow, actually, that was kind of fun. And then I went back to that mindset thing, like, maybe a lot of it's just me. I'm going in with a bad mindset.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
so
and yeah, it was tight. It was kind of dicey. Like, I don't know that I would have survived that fight if I hadn't been 100% fresh.
yes, and I did know that going in there 100% fresh. I would have not done that to you guys if you weren't for sure. But it was, I mean, you guys were, everybody was kind of like, oh, okay, here we go, and then the
I
other wave comes in and you're like, oh, okay, here we go. And then just, I mean, man, we had I was doing damage to you guys, and I'm rolling, and I'm like, yeah, somebody's gonna drop. Oh my gosh, like, is he gonna drop yet? And there's a few crits involved. An interesting thing about it was that a lot of them were pretty low damage, but they were pretty darn accurate. And those little cuts were adding up super quick, especially since like I rolled max damage on like five of the first six rolls or something crazy. And it
Right.
was just like, okay, tink, 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 your turn, tink, your turn, tink, your turn. Again, doing so many different initiatives, I did actually think that was kind of fun, even though two of you guys did back to back actions, but it was still interesting though.
Yeah, it worked out.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that didn't happen in that combat, which a lot of combats happen, and I've kind of talked about this offline with you and maybe a little bit on the podcast. A lot of combat kind of devolves into like players go, monsters go.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if there's just like one monster, it's like players go,
Yeah.
monsters go. And people are like, well, like some people are going before the monster. I'm like, for the first turn, these three guys go before
Yeah.
the monster goes, and then the rest of the party goes, and then the three guys go. So now we have the entire party. Once that monster goes, the entire party goes. It only matters on the first turn
Yeah.
that it gets
Yeah.
split up.
Yeah. I mean, it can matter, I guess, if for order of actions and stuff, but I know what you're saying though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gave it a try doing a million initiatives yesterday or the other
Yeah.
day, but I I'm kind of glad I did it, even though it was a bit of a headache.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of fun.
If you have a good way of keeping track of it, it is, I think, good to split the monsters up.
I agree. I think it's better.
And
I do think it's better. Makes it more
because then
dynamic. Makes it more
it
dynamic.
does. And it makes the initiative make more reason, like makes the initiative itself make more sense.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
like for like what you did, like like having like four kobolds going on the same combat, 100%. Like you got 20 dudes out there, they don't all need their initiative, right?
Yeah.
But like that was a great use of just like a bunch of little guys coming in and just doing swarms. And um, ironically, this is the first time I never liked Word of Radiance as a cantrip until that until that combat.
It
That combat was like, oh god, it actually is
yeah.
doing something. What is this?
It saved your guys' butts for sure.
It
I
was
that
the
was
perfect spell.
it
It
was
was the
great.
perfect spell for
It
that
was
combat.
great. So what do you do? What's a tip if you're playing in a combat that you think is boring? What do you think? What do you think the player should do?
The players,
Yeah, if the player's playing in a combat that they think is boring, what do you think they should do?
sometimes it helps to like for me, like try to figure out what other players could be doing. Not necessarily what they should be doing, right? But like that way, when they're kind of stuck, you're like, hey, how about? So they're not taking forever on their turn. Like, hey, here's an idea for you.
Oh,
Like
okay.
right, like or this will be
Telling
really
people
helpful
how
for
they
me.
let's
Not necessarily telling them how to do
yeah.
their turn, but
Uh-huh.
when
Uh-huh.
they're stuck and they don't know what to do, they're like, I don't know what to do. Like, how about this?
Yeah, I hear you. Ooh, that did make me think of something. To make combat go smoother when people are playing, be prepared for your turn because
Yeah.
holy God, or have your dice ready for goodness sakes. Because if you attack with a D20 and you roll a D6, just have those dice right by you. There's no reason to have them separated, right? Like just
Mhm.
have them by you. And when it's your turn, don't be like, oh yeah, yeah, let me take a look here. Yeah. It's like, what have you been doing for the last 5 minutes?
Yeah. There is some of that, right? Like
There
you
is,
want to
there
make
is.
sure you're ready and stuff. The other thing is like stay engaged with like what other people are doing because then you'll learn what
Yeah,
they can do. So if you need them to do a certain action down the road to help you out, you can do it. You can be
that's
like,
it.
hey, do this. And then some players aren't as knowledgeable in the game, right? So you can watch them do some things and you're like, well, how about you try doing, like give them some like tips for like next combat
Yeah,
to help it
yeah.
go, maybe like make them either A, be more effective or go faster. Like I was paying attention, like this one guy was playing, we were playing in an adventure league, and this guy was playing, and I'm like, "You're a ranger, right?" And he goes, "Yeah, did you multi-class?" He's like, "No." And I'm like, "Where's your second attack?" He's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're level 5, right? You should have 2 attacks."
Mm,
He's like, "Oh."
yeah, that's big.
Yeah, I mean,
That's big.
but because I was engaged, paying attention to what he was doing, I caught that he
Yeah.
was only taking 1 attack.
Yeah. But I'm actually glad that you said that though. So first off, being engaged will help. Maybe you think it's boring, but to be honest, the DM is trying to do the best that they can. Okay? So don't be a jerk and be like, "Oh, well, this is boring. I'm just kind of checked out." Because and I know sometimes naturally maybe that just happens to you. But yeah, try to be engaged, to be polite for one thing, but also you're right. If you listen to other people, or if the DM listens to people, everybody should be listening to each other, and actually you build the story off of each other, and that will help out a lot too. So I'm really glad that you said that for sure. I think that's awesome.
And Brian, for all the crap that you're giving me about somebody else telling me, playing other characters or whatever. That combat, somebody said, "Do you really want to do that in action right now? Maybe you could do something else." And I was like, you know, they're right. Like I admitted, I took the critique and said they were right. Like they got me.
I will say this though, during combat, I like it when players just do what they want to do and play instead of everybody stopping and going, wait a minute, maybe you should do this, maybe you should do that, because that slows things down like
That it does
crazy. And
slow
it
thing down.
also, other people make the decisions for you at times too. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, yeah. No, I think D&D combat is something that obviously happens a lot in role playing, and just finding a good mix of what works for you and what works for your players is going to obviously have a big impact. But the more I talk right now, the more I think it's probably my attitude and mindset beforehand.
It can be, and sometimes too, like during combat, um, this is gonna sound bad, but during combat, like I can still hear what's going on, right? So I take that moment, like on in digital games, to go like grab something, so I'm not like making everybody wait for me.
Oh, sure.
But I'm
Sure.
still listening. I'm just
Yeah.
I'm just doing some other things that
Yeah.
that are I get to stand up and like move around a little bit, so to kind of get some of that fidgetness out of the thing. But I'm still listening. I'm
That's a good
still
point.
following along. But
Yeah.
now I got my grape juice, and I got some popcorn, and I'm ready to go for another hour.
True. And I'm just so used to doing the podcast now where it's like strict and we
Yeah.
have to like pause the thing for breaks. You can't really move and make a lot of noise in between that. And so I I miss the days of playing and not having to worry. I can eat and not have to worry about it being on mic. Actually, I do love the podcast though. So check us out. D4 on the floor. It's a really good podcast. It's the best in the world. So
Yeah.
but yeah, combat can take many shapes and forms, and whether you play theater of the mind or you play with a map, I mean, you can have fun with it. Um, I'm I'm like you. I gotta keep doing more terrain because you want to make it matter, and it does matter, and it adds some excitement and it adds some fluff to it.
Just making somebody walk around something too, like can
Yeah,
change the
yeah.
dynamic.
And with combat, you have also talked about having if you do use the map and the grid, that you can see the auras of things, and it's just a lot easier to do. And yeah, you can make it more dynamic and fun. And
Yeah. Word of Radiance, I think, would be hard to use well in Theater of the Mind because, like, how many guys are within 5 feet of the cleric?
yeah, might be a lot more always than you'd think. Because the other night, there wasn't a ton of people all the time. He had to really get in the right spot, but which is cool. Which is cool. Worked out really well.
Yeah, it was a lot of positioning. Sometimes he got surrounded, but sometimes he had a position to get, an extra
Yeah.
guy or two.
And then when it comes to D&D Combat 2, I would say that if you go a few sessions in and maybe you're just not having as much fun with the combat as a player, or the opposite way. If you're running the game and you're like, yeah, these combats don't seem great, always goes back to talk to your players, talk to your DM, and just say,
Hmm.
hey, I kind of feel like combat's like this. What do you think? And just get that conversation going, because you obviously want to have fun. It's hard to make everybody totally happy. So that has to be a thing too. Like it's not going to happen. Everybody's not going to be super happy all the time. But I do feel like a lot of gaming groups, most people can be very happy most of the time. I don't think that's too difficult if you are playing with some pretty good buddies, anyways. But yeah, just talk. Just talk, because all it's going to do is make people rethink about how they're doing stuff, or
Yeah.
how they approach things. And like that quick conversation we had that one night when you said, well, you just have to make it entertaining. And I was like, you're right. Okay. It's me. A lot of it's me. You're right.
I, it takes it takes two people to have a problem, right? One person doesn't have a problem with themselves,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Like,
So like it
y-
takes two people to have a problem, right? So
you're
sometimes
right.
we can sometimes the answer lies within yourself, and you can find it. You know, like some of it's mindset, but like maybe you just try doing some different actions or explore some different options that your
I'm
character could do to make it more interesting.
I'm glad you said that. Actually, that is something. If you are kind of getting bored, maybe use the same spell all the time or do the exact same action all the time. Start switching it up, because you will find that it, even though maybe something doesn't hit nearly as hard, it can be pretty darn entertaining.
Hmm.
And then DMs just always have to remember to make adjustments if anything crazy happens, of course, or anything that they were totally not expecting. But no, that's a great thing. I really like that you said that. So
Just remember, there's only one spell that the fighters need to cast. They can cast iron. All right, let's go.
nice. Hey, with that being said, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and make sure that you have fun in your D&D combat. It takes everyone. And talk to your group, have fun, have a good mindset, because that's apparently what I need to do. Thank you, and have a good one.
Yeah, have a good night, everybody.